In Your Mind by Duffy. The other country is anticipated or half remembered. Its language is muffled by the rain which falls all afternoon. One autumn in England, and in your mind, you put aside your work and head for the airport. With a credit card and a warm coat, you will leave on the plane. The past fades like a newsprint in the sun. You know people there. Their faces are photographs on the wrong side of your eyes. A beautiful boy in the bar on the harbor serves you a drink. What? Asks you if men could possibly land on the moon. A moon like an orange drawn by a child. No, never. You watch it peel itself into the sea. Sleep. The rasp of carpentry wakes you. On the wall, a painting list for 30 years renders the room yours. Of course, you go to your job, right at the old hotel, left, then left again. You love your job. App sounds mark the passing of the hours. Seagulls, bells, a flute, practicing sailed. You swap a coin for a fish on the way home. Then suddenly you are lost, but not lost. Dawdling on the blue bridge, watching 6 swans vanish under your feet. The certainty of a place turns on the lights, and all over town turns up the scent of the air. For a moment, you are there, and in the other country, knowing its name. And then dusk, a newspaper, a window, English rain. I personally see 4 sections in this poem. The first stanza is you fading to the other country. Second stanza is you arriving at your destination. And stanza 3 is you belonging in that destination. And stanza 4 is you going back to reality. This is the art piece I feel represents this poem, at least in my opinion. So, when I first started looking at pictures, this one was the one that stood out to me, and then I decided to dive in a little bit deeper, and I figured it was the perfect example. One of the main reasons is it's strong in surrealism, and this comes after, centuries before it was mainly realism and stuff. I don't know, I'm not a big art guy. And so this one was kind of like, it's like make things abstract, I guess. Kind of, it's 1930s, another famous painters like Picasso, and then you have like Sigmund Freud with the unconscious. It's kind of like into dreams, and then I guess right here, like the painting kind of feels dreamy to me. And then I learned that Dali, the painter, he liked to take naps for creativity because he felt like, that would just boost him and give him that inspiration he needed. And then, when looking at the painting, you look at the distance, the loss of space and time. One of the things I noticed was the sky, aside from obviously the melting clocks. And there's another thing, this little one to the side, it has ants, and it's kind of like decaying as well. So which is kind of like that bring back to reality from this dream state. This first stanza has multiple different parts that I felt like needed to be annotated. I guess right off the start, it starts off with a rhetorical question, is it anticipated or half remembered, which is kind of going into like, I guess, desire to go away from reality, and then I guess maybe you've been there or you're revisiting like old memories in the past. Then obviously it sets up the setting as England. One of the things I noticed, and this was like a little bit ago, I was like finishing up this, and then I was like, you put aside your work and head for the airport. It's a pun, and I don't know, I'm not rocking with it. And then with a credit card, and that adds realism. It makes you resonate with the reader. The warm coat, also the departure, and then back to that England setting. So this other country that you're leaving to is far away from England. And then the past fades like newsprint in the sun. That's simile. So in the second section, I mentioned earlier how it's kind of like the you arriving at your destination, and then it's people there. It starts off with a second person point of view, just right off the bat. Their faces are photographs. That's a metaphor, and I guess it goes back to that distance where it kind of goes back to that familiarity without establishing it, but that'll happen later on. And then on the wrong side of your eyes, the brain's on the opposite side of your eyes. That's where your memories are. Beautiful boy, that's an alliteration, and then the bar as well. So I think that one shows the like naiveness and kind of like the carefree environment that you're going to be in like the stream state. And then harbor, that obviously indicates that this is British. What is kind of like a little bit of dialogue in there, and it kind of wakes you up from the dream kind of a little. And then ask you if men could possibly land on the moon. So this poem was written in the 60s, I believe. No wait, 90s. And so the moon landing happened 60s, and then that's something that would seem implausible, you know, but it's obviously did happen. And then a moon like an orange drawn by a child, that's also another simile. No, never. You watch itself peel into the sea. So the peel itself is personification. And then going back to that no, never, that's double negative. And it kind of like, you wouldn't think that something like the moon landing would happen, but it did. So this also starts off in the alliteration with back to the previous slide, the sea, and then sleep. Also another short sentence, straight to the point. Then there's that job, and then so with that job, you kind of have it could either be it's at a new place, and since you're probably daydreaming, that's like the main thing happening in this poem is the daydream, is of a new job. You might dislike your old job, and then this one you love, and then it's familiarity. Obviously, it's your job. And then the marking the passing of the hours, which I think is really what made me go back to that painting. It's the passing of the hours, the clock's melting. Seagulls, bells, the flute. It helps create imagery of that harbor. And it's like harmony, I guess. Kind of like perfect. You swap a coin for a fish. And then, so I find that kind of wacky. I don't know. And then, but one of my sources kind of had it as saying it refers to it as indulgence, and I really didn't see it. I kind of saw it more as wacky. I guess that would be my criticism of that criticism. I'm almost out of time. I'm gonna hurry up. Okay, then suddenly that's very abrupt. It brings you back, to like back where you were. You are lost but not lost. That's a juxtaposition. Kind of shows you like that contrast from where you were at the beginning of the poem versus where you are now. Blue Bridge, alliteration, six swans. I'll come back to that. Then certainty is I guess the change. You're not lost anymore, even though you're in a place where you would be lost because it's another country. All over town turns up, so that's kind of like the sudden, kind of like, and then the there you go, and then the turns on the lights, turns up. So when you wake up, and then it takes you a while to get up, I guess. And then you are in the other country, which is knowing. So that also goes back to the change, and then the different, like how the second stanza said you were in pictures. Their memories are pictures, but now you know its name. And then the dusk, so that brings you back to the routine, and it like the last line kind of serves to ground you, I guess, back to reality, but it also kind of feels comforting in a way. So back to that fairy tale, I guess, The Six Swans. It's a fairy tale by the Grimm's brother, published in 1812. And I feel like it relates back to the fantasy aspect, this illusion, I guess. So in the story, there's a king. He gets lost in the woods one day. He gets the help of a witch, and he promises to marry his daughter. That daughter's obviously evil. And then the king already had four princes, but he sends them to be isolated in the woods, but he still visits them. And so the wife gets kind of mad, and she curses them by sending them shirts that'll turn them into swans. And they become swans. And then, but they had a sister, and the sister figures out that she can lift the curse by not talking for 6 years, and by giving them a different type of shirt back. And she does that. But while she's doing that, she ends up getting married, and she also becomes a queen. And then this obviously, the evil stepmother tries to stop it. She makes the two children that the sister had swans as well. And then once the 6 years are coming up, they get the shirts. They all go back to normal. Maybe like a little, like some guy just kept the wing, and then but she became a swan, and then she was gonna get killed for because she had been accused of being the ones turning them into swans. But then she is able to defend herself, and then the evil stepmother ends up getting punished. So it relates back to that, suffering. And I felt like it was also interesting because the four brothers in the story, Carol and Duffy also had four brothers in the story. And then there's that one line of 30 years. And then since the poem was published in 1990, it could relate back to her childhood, which would have been in the 60s, which was 30 years ago. I guess some other things I want to mention is that the poem is written in a quatrain of 6 lines. There's no rhyming. It's a free verse poem. It's written like a narrative. It feels like a story. And then simple diction, easy to understand. There's a lot of sky imagery, I feel. And then there was the harbor imagery, and then there's the sky because you have the moon, the sun, the airplane, the rain. The end.